Hi, this is Charles with Historical Gaming, and I wanted to introduce you to a copy of Tide of Iron Next Wave that I just got. I had the original set, which is in the big, huge coffin box, and I'm interested to see how they packed everything in this one little tiny box here. We might do a little demonstration of how to play the game. There's some good YouTube videos out there already. So we've got some introductory scenarios that help you learn the game with base mechanics and things like that. From what I understand, the scenarios have been balanced more than the original. When the original game first came out, it was very tough to win as the Americans. But I think they fixed all that. If you already have the first copy of the game, you can download those rules for free online. So going over basically how a scenario works, you've got deployment zones that are highlighted in green. Different squads. You have different color bases that you could use to help identify if you have multiplayers, multiple people playing. You can use different color bases up to 4. There's 2 different colors of green and 2 different colors of gray, and basically that's how you separate the players so they can kind of use their squads. So one thing that's interesting about here is they set up the squads for you in advance. One of the things that I remember that was difficult when I first opened this box was trying to decide how to set up a squad. So you get the choice of a bunch of regulars and a bunch of veterans and a machine gun and a mortar team and things like that. So I was having a hard time, what's the best way to set all this up? And it kind of drove me crazy because I just really wasn't familiar with how to do it. So it's nice here that they give you an idea of a good way to do your mixes. So you can see with the rifles level, those are regulars, and with the rifles down, it's very hard to see in this picture, is the elite. So they've done 2 regulars and 2 elite. And so how that works out is the regulars fire at 1 die, the elites fire at 2. So when you're calculating how much firepower a base has, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the way they've set this up is each one of them would have 6 shots per on a regular fire order. Now you can do assault moves, which is moving and firing and different things like that. Since this is an introductory game, they've got I think they've got some mortars in here, but I don't see the officer, but I'm sure he's in there somewhere. So let's just go on with the video for now. So next thing you do is after you read this first, at the bottom you go on to read second. So here is the base rules of the game. The game looks like a lot when you look at the scenarios because there's a lot of information on here. But basically you just use the boards here that match the numbers on the scenario card. You put them in the orientation, you connect them together like they tell you. There's overlays, which are pieces that help change the board in case they need a mountain somewhere where there wasn't a mountain on that map. There's barbed wire, and there's bunkers and all kinds of cool stuff in here. You can see the different levels of elevation here. So brown is 1 layer of elevation, and a dark brown is 2 layers of elevation. So there's some information here about how to build squads, stacking limits, which is pretty common, like a lot of games in the squad level. As I remember, it's 3 squads and 2 vehicles. So in other games that I've played, that's so easy to remember. It's nice that they're kind of consistent with that. Place your starting units in the deployment area. It doesn't really tell you where to put them, so you got to decide where do you want your machine gun. One of the great things about this game is the opportunity fire. The way it works, it is deadly. So that was one of the problems with the first game, as far as if you were a German player and you put your MG34 or MG42, I can't remember which one it is, the machine gun, the heavy machine gun, in a spot that had opportunity fire all the way across the board, everybody who crossed in front of it just got hit, and it was very hard to overcome unless you figured out a way. And a lot of times you're just running across the board hoping not to get hit, which kind of makes perfect sense if you think about scenarios like Carentan, where you got, like in Band of Brothers Carentan, you've got a machine gun up in a building, and the Americans have to take the building. You really don't have any choice but to just run straight forward towards the building. Let's see. So there's different phases to the game. There's some cards to the game which make it really nice. So there's the action phase, command phase, and status phase. Each action, this is kind of interesting, can advance, so you can move forward. You can concentrate fire, which means just firing. Set a unit up for prep op fire, which is opportunity fire. You can do fire and movement. You can use a strategy card. You can assault someone, fatigue a unit, or special action. So talking about advance is just movement. Fire is just firing all of your units' firepower. And prep op fire, basically you put a token on it. It means anybody who moves in front of him gets shot at. And then, of course, if you have the MG or the machine gun, it has the ability to keep firing, where some units, if they opportunity fire, they're fatigued. So the difference between activated and fatigued, or fresh units, is that if a unit hasn't been used, it's called fresh, and if you use it, it's called fatigued. So the action of firing makes it fatigued. The action of moving makes it fatigued. So typically in a scenario and stuff like that, you'll have 3 units which are fatigued or used, and then your opponent will get 3 units to fatigue. And that goes back and forth until all the units are fatigued in the game, and once that's complete, you turn all the units back over, you set units up for opportunity fire that you want to, you go through different phases, and then start over again, completing each turn. Some cool things that happen in the game as far as the card play, there's lots of different decks, and each deck is associated with each type of scenario. So, you know, you might have, let's see what we have here. Here's the units, and here are the cards. So you've got ley mines. So you've got the American support deck. These are just extra. German reinforcements deck. So you can kind of choose which deck you want to draw from. So in some scenarios you might have 3 or 4 of these decks set up. You've got a morale deck. So a morale deck might be go to the ground. Place 2 concealed squad markers on 2 friendly squads located in the same non-objective hex. You may not choose squads that are adjacent to enemy units. Another morale card. So remember, as an action, instead of playing a unit to fire or move or do actions like that, you can do these cards and stuff. And sometimes the cards enhance a fire attack or enhance a movement or something like that. So here's another example. Take down the beast. In the command phase, place in your play area when combining fire against a heavy vehicle, you may discard this card to gain 3 additional firepower. So the command cost is 1. So what a command cost is as you're playing this game, you build up coins. In here somewhere that oh, I'll show you here. They're built into this map thing. As you play and do certain actions, as you take objectives, you'll get more and more coins, which are not visible here, but basically one of these little punch-out things. And as you accumulate those, you can take those to play these cards and play the command costs. So some of the command costs are 0. Some of the command costs are 5 and 6. Ground support deck, so say let's do a ground support area here. Suppressive support. Choose 1 enemy squad within line of sight of any friendly unit. Then place a pinned token on the enemy squad. Or you could flip a pinned token on the enemy squad to its disrupt side. So that's pretty cool. We've got a command deck. Command deck 1, artillery deck, which is nice. And all the components in this game is really nice. So I'll show you how. The original game was pretty awesome. I have all the expansions for the original game, And everything seems to be compatible from what I understand. So I like the fact that it fits in this smaller box. The fact that it had an insert tells me that it's going to be able to fit back in pretty easily. I was kind of concerned about that, but turns out it looks like it's okay. So like, look at the thickness of these boards. That's pretty nice. And they punch right out. These are like hidden unit markers, or you can use markers to track units. So you've got hidden marker units here, and then you use these to mark which units do different actions in the game. Like if you're transporting a unit, instead of setting the unit on top of the transport, you can actually use one of these markers and set the transported unit off the board. So here's your tokens I was talking about, to mark which unit is which. And this is like hidden unit stuff, which is really cool. These are opportunity fire and fatigue markers. So if your unit is being in opportunity fire, you just place one of these tokens on it at the beginning of the round, so everybody knows that they're in opportunity mode. As an action, you can place a unit in opportunity mode. So you've got different types of markers related to stress, damage. You've got customization of squads. So you can have a flamethrower unit, you can have an engineer. Can't remember what some of these are, bazooka teams. And all you do is put that little marker into the clip, so you can easily identify what unit is where. So assembling these units take a little time because you have to put the soldiers inside these little dots, and then you put your little marker like that. So now you know that guy has a bazooka, and he could use bazooka related skills whenever he plays. Armor is just armor. You put those guys out there, and they look good. You can paint them up. They're pretty easy to paint. All you need is what's it called? There's a certain type of primer that you can buy that comes in the colors for German and American. You just spray paint those one color, and they look absolutely great, just like that. And then you can get little decals and put the stickers on and stuff, and dress them up very easily. When I first started painting, which I'm not a great painter or anything like that, I started doing that. And to my Memoir 44 stuff, it looked great. Did it to my Tide of Iron. So here's the fatigue side. So when a unit gets used and is completely done with their action, you just put a fatigue marker on there, and you know that that unit can't do anything until at the end of the round when those are taken away. So as an example, at the beginning of the turn, I'm starting in a hex, and I decided I want to move this guy, and I'll move him up to his number of spaces. Then I'll put the fatigue marker next to him, marking the fact that he's used. So each individual unit type has specific things that they can do, and it's very easy to understand when you look at these cards. So it's a regular infantry has a range of 4 and a firepower of 1 when he's shooting against an infantry. So there's a little infantry guy here that you can't see. But if he's shooting against the tank, it's only a range 1 and a firepower of 1. So he's got to be right up against the tank in order for him to be effective against that. As I remember, I think hits are on 6s. I'm sorry, I can't remember how the combat actually works. But you roll a bunch of dice. So, yeah, and you're looking for 6s, and 6s are hits. It might be 5 in certain situations, but I can't really remember. The officer, it shows what he does. The machine gun crew has a range of 5, has a firepower of 3. And so it's really well laid out as far as how this goes. The Sherman tank has a range of 5 against infantry, 6 against the tank. So that's kind of like HE versus AP. HE is against infantry, which is high explosive type rounds, and AP is armor piercing, which is used to shoot against tanks. So I've always been a big fan of Memoir 44 to help people get started in the game, but this really takes it to the next level, allowing you to simply play a scenario, simply play out different types of weapons. So now you're looking at regular infantry, machine gun crews, trucks, vehicles, transports. And then you've got the introductory scenarios, which let you move kind of slow into it, get used to the idea of how things work. And then as you get into more and more complicated scenarios, you start understanding how to use a transport vehicle to move troops up faster to a certain point in the game. Or, bazookas and special teams and things like that, which are really nice. This is a really good game. It's one of my favorites. The only thing I really don't like about it is the setup time, but I'm like that with a bunch of games. The setup time is really no worse than Memoir 44 or a lot of other games, but sometimes it's just hard with the amount of time that you have to play to take 15 to 20 minutes. If you have somebody helping you, it's not so bad. But it's a really fun game. It looks good. The geomorphic maps help because they're already kind of pre-laid out for you, unlike Memoir 44 where you're looking for a special hex to put in a certain area. This one you put the board out and you have overlays which make it really simple. And the toughest part is looking at the units. And if you keep them separated, it's not so bad. But you can look at this unit and tell it's an elite. I'm sorry, a regular rifle because the rifle's level if the rifle was at his waist. And then you just pop these into the little bases. So this is an American base, but I'm just going to show you. Just pop that to the base. Fits really well, and it stays. And so as you take hits from the game, you reduce the marker out. Let's say we had a machine gun team. And we had this guy here. And so we take a hit on this unit and we just basically remove our rifle team, leaving our machine gun team intact. So when we're calculating the firepower, we're adding this guy's firepower plus the rifle if he's in range, plus the elite if he's in range. And now that they're reduced, you're just down to the firepower of the machine gun. So calculating firepower is really easy. You look at the unit, you know exactly what's going on. And another thing that's really cool about the game is that if you've got a unit over here, as a part of the phase in the game, there's a phase called regrouping. You can actually make this unit stronger and put this guy here. So you can protect your machine gun team by transferring units from one squad to another. Very cool things to do. So here's your player reference sheet, and just to quickly go over that. Determine the control over objectives. So if a unit is on an objective, typically, they would get points for that at the end of the turn. And the scenario shows clearly where all those things are. The next thing is to receive command or victory points, which we just talked about. We can spend commands, so we can bid on initiative, see who goes first by bidding secretly in our hand how many points we want to spend towards initiative. And if the player who wins initiative gets to go first. So now we get to the actual game. We draw strategy cards. In order of initiative, each nation draws one strategy card from a strategy deck, and that was like the morale deck or the artillery support deck, that's set up by the scenario notes, placing a card from the strategy deck of its choice, placing the card face up in its HQ area, so you can see what your opponent has. Remove all tokens. So you remove all the activation tokens and pin conditions from the game, and then disrupted flipped over to pin. So each turn you're recovering your damage. So if somebody's damaged, you want to hit them hard. Any units that you want to place in op fire mode, you place that little opportunity fire token that I told you about. Squad transfers, if you want to move units from one to another to help regain strength in one unit, you can do that. Scenario reinforcements and events. So if there's anything special to the scenario that's going to happen, that's where it will. And advance the round marker to the next round. So resolving an attack. So at close range, it's 4, 5, 6. Normal range 5 and 6, and long range it's 6. And those are clearly marked somewhere. I can't remember. But like I said, you can see it right here. Determine the successes. You do a normal attack. You can decide to do a normal attack, which is against a squad, or you can do a suppressive attack, which is against the hex. Now, usually mortars are the ones who do suppressive attacks, trying to suppress everybody in an area to keep them from moving. If you suppress them and they're out in the open, then you got a great target for the next round for your rifles to shoot them in the open and stuff. You can do a normal attack against the squad, and it explains clearly how this works. suppressive attacks against the squad. The effect of hits depends on the pre-attack conditions of the squad. So a normal condition is 1 or 2 hits or for penned. 3 hits is disrupted. 4+ hits, squad destroyed. That's pretty much it. So the different actions that we talked about earlier we can do in the game. Advance. The unit may move up to its full movement value. After the active unit has completed its movement, it is fatigued. So again, going back to this chart, you can look at his movement rating, which is 4. Movement 4, movement 4. Concentrated fire. The active unit fires against an enemy unit with its full firepower value. Fresh, friendly units may support the attack with combined fire. So you can have other squads in your area helping you, if I believe they have to be adjacent. After resolving the attack, the active unit and all supporting units are fatigued. So fire and movement. Now this is where you reduce your firepower a little bit from moving. So the active unit moves on the game board and may make an attack against the enemy unit. Attack, then move. Oh, you can move, then attack, or attack, then move. So the following penalties apply to fire and movement. A squad taking a fire and movement action receives 1 fewer movement points during the activation. A vehicle taking fire and movement action receives 2 fewer movement points during the activation. A unit taking a fire and movement action must halve its firepower when making its attack. A unit making a fire and movement action may not make a long-range attack. So that's pretty cool. If you can get a couple units moving in on somebody and doing a fire and movement, it kind of helps offset the fact that you're running out there by yourself and doing fire and movement. You could fatigue a unit, just say, hey, I'm not going to do anything with him, I'm going to fatigue him. Prepare for op fire, you just place an op fire marker beside him. The unit is now in op fire, may engage in op fire and attack against the enemy during the opponent's turn. Friendly units also in op fire mode may support the attack with combined fire. Sorry about that, the phone rang. So I'm going to skip assault for just a second and then talk about activating a strategy card. Then you can do a special action. Special actions are typically made available by strategy cards, operations cards, specialization tokens, and sometimes a scenario itself. Effects and special abilities that require an action always state as an action in their text. Now the last thing, assault, is one of those things that just really, if you know how to use it, it can be really effective in the game. The active squad may move on the game board, after which it may make an assault attack against an adjacent hex containing 1 or more enemy units. So there's more clear instructions on how that happens, but basically a melee is going to happen. And there's some really cool things. So if I were going to play this game, the only thing I would make sure that I knew how to do is the assault, because when it happens to you in the game, most of the time you're surprised. You're like, well, because a lot of time you're running around the board and you're trying to get all these tactical advantages and stuff, and then somebody just runs up and starts meleeing you, and you're just like, whoa, what just happened? So be prepared for the assault and know how that works. Other than that, almost everything makes sense in the game. You move, you fire, you can fire and move. You can kind of join units back together, which is kind of different for this like squad level type games that I've played. Usually you can't regroup. And the fact that you can regroup helps you coordinate a full strength unit. You're taking platoons or squads, and like you're taking injured guys from one away, but you're putting other guys with them to help keep that unit going and achieving its objective. So remember regrouping too. So that's it as far as my review. It's a great game. I really like it. Lots of great components. The overlays are nice. The maps are nice. You can see there's lots of good map boards here. They're very nice, thick quality. They're labeled, so you can always get the orientation. They're labeled. You can always get the orientation from the scenario map, and you just connect them together, and you'll see a mountain range like appear right here. There's all kinds of different tokens and things like that in the game, so you might want to get a Plano box that fits inside this box. So I hope you enjoyed the review and box opening, and take care.